Chapter 195. No way. It couldn't go on like this. The only way was to leave the dense forest and go to an open area. When there was nothing to hide behind, he wanted to see how the enemy would attack. In this regard, Jiang Pingji could clearly tell the enemy that those who deserved to die would still die. It had little to do with where they died. It was not easy to escape from the dense forest. Originally, he had brought 20 followers with him, but now there were only 2 left. The closer they got to the exit of the dense forest, the more frequently Jiang Pingji shot. Seeing that they had escaped, any normal person would feel relaxed. It was also the best opportunity to attack. However, when the leader brought the remaining 2 survivors to the place where they had rested, what they saw were 4 bodies lying in a pool of blood. The leader's eyes were wide open, and his fierce look scared the 2 followers who followed him. The only survivor was the follower who had gone to fetch water and was lucky enough to survive. Of the 5 people who stayed were dead and only this one was alive. Of the 3 people who went to fetch water, 2 were dead and only this one was alive. The anger in the leader's heart could no longer be suppressed. He strode forward and grabbed the follower's collar. "Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me, are you a spy for those villains? Did you deliberately lure us there?" The leader glared at the follower, who had been scared to the point of delirium. His face was smeared with sticky blood. The audience in the streaming room was speechless. Wait, what kind of weird development was this? Why did they suddenly have internal strife? No, internal strife was internal strife. Why did they suspect that the unlucky guy who had been scared twice by the streamer was the murderer? Fengji Liaon, I feel sorry for him. First he was scared twice by the streamer and now he's suspected to be the murderer. Zhou Xian, sorry, really very sorry. No, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurts. Did the leader become a stick? Lao Siji Lianming, I bet a spicy stick. This is definitely an Easter egg left by the streamer on purpose to test their intelligence. It was no wonder that the viewers in the live streaming channel were so happy. This turn of events had shocked everyone. The followers around the leader were all brought here by himself. He knew everyone's background, so it was impossible for there to be a spy. Of course, it was also possible under extreme circumstances. Some viewers in the live stream room were mocking him, but naturally, there were also people who had different opinions. Chestnut is delicious. Am I the only one who thinks the leader's reaction is normal? After being scared by the streamer so many times and seeing the people around him die one after another, the psychological pressure was unimaginable. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to maintain a normal level of thinking, and they would definitely subconsciously suspect the most suspicious person. Who was the most suspicious person at the moment? It must be the survivor. Putting himself in their shoes, if he was one of the members of the team, facing a completely clueless enemy, and every time the enemy attacked, one member of the team would definitely die, and no one would know if he or she would be the next target. The fear of death lingered in one's heart. The Grim Reaper's footsteps were hot on one's heels. Even a person with a strong mental defense would collapse in an instant under such a dense frequency of attacks. However, from God's perspective, the leader's judgment was indeed laughable. At this time, the audience in the live broadcast room was silent, and then they agreed to speak. Not to mention anything else, they just said that the host had too much bad taste. Jiang Pingji smiled. Her bad taste was yet to come. Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me. The leader grabbed the other's collar and roared as he questioned. At the same time, Jiang Pingji steadily raised the bow, drew an arrow and aimed at the target. Swoosh! In the next moment, blood burst out and covered his face. His neck seemed to be strangled by an invisible hand, and it forcibly stopped him from speaking. That's bad taste. Jiang Pingji snorted coldly, and another wave of 666 flew by in the live broadcast room. My host, you're amazing. Jiang Pingji was too lazy to struggle with the last few shrimps. She raised her hand, put her finger to her lips and whistled. The horse neighed and the sound of hooves came from afar. A vigorous white figure galloped out of the dense forest. The other horses seemed to be summoned and they all ran toward the white horse. The scene was chaotic. Game over. Jiang Pingji drew her bow for the last time and killed 2 birds with 1 stone. She took the lives of the 2 people beside the leader. She had said that 1 messenger was enough. Let's go. Pack up and go home. The white horse galloped toward her. Jiang Pingji smiled, ran 2 steps forward and jumped on the horse's back. The pure-blooded warhorse of the northern borderline was indeed worthy of its reputation. Only then did the leader see who had ambushed them. Just as he was about to draw his bow and shoot an arrow, the horse galloped wildly, kicking up a cloud of dust and blocking his line of sight. All he could see was the buttocks of the horse and the small figure that had already become a small dot in the distance. Humph! The leader was so angry that he threw the bow and arrow in his hand to the ground. None of the 27 followers around him survived. Who is it? That's too much. The leader spat out these words through gritted teeth, and a smell of iron spread in his mouth. The only thing he could be thankful for was that his horse had a good relationship with him, and it was not affected by the white horse. Otherwise he would have to walk to the next station with an empty stomach. In the future, I will take revenge. Jiang Pingji did not care whether he wanted to take revenge or not. Even his life was deliberately spared. If it were not for the messenger, he would have died and gone to hell to show off his arrogance to the king of hell. Jiang Pingji hung up the bow and put the quiver back. She leisurely sat on the horse's back and let the white horse walk around as it pleased. She led a group of brothers to look for food. The horses were intimidated by the white horse's imposing manner, so they all became obedient. It seems that you are the king of horses. Jiang Pingji saw that and patted the horse's neck with a smile. The horse responded with a loud snort. Its beautiful and smooth mane swayed slightly with its movements, brushing against her wrist and making her feel a little itchy. What a proud little girl. Yes, it was a mare, but it was more hot-tempered than any stallion. It liked to kick its hooves at the slightest provocation. Jiang Pingji carefully counted the number of horses. There were exactly 27 of them. Host V, this is a big win. It seems that robbing the enemy to help me is good for my health. What do you mean by robbing the enemy to help me? Host, your worldview has fallen to the ground. Do you want to bend down and pick it up? The viewers in the streaming room said that they had lived for a long time, but they liked Jiang Pingji's carefree and unrestrained behavior. So, their worldview had been led astray by the host. Chapter 196. Jiang Pingji jumped down from the horse's back. The white horse was very understanding. It rubbed her cheek affectionately and then ran to the side to nibble on the grass. I wonder when I can eat pears. Looking at the pear trees by the banks of the Yishui River, Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. Her nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of pears. At this time no one was holding a gathering on the bank of the Yi River, so there was no one on the bank at all, except for the constantly moving horse butts. Jiang Pingji walked straight to the shore. She kicked off her wooden clogs and took off her socks. She dipped her feet into the water and sighed. A cool feeling spread from the tip of her toes to the rest of her body. Jiang Pingji placed her hands on the stones by the river and leaned back slightly to look at the sky. Shushu loved slowly. I was quietly lurking, but the host's feet blew me out. Lao Ciji Lianming. I think this is today's benefit. The foot control group is blessed. Lu Shi was, after all, a spoiled child. Whether it was riding a horse, shooting a gun, or running, his skin was always a little delicate. Now his feet had a few red blisters burning hot. When he touched the cold river water, he shivered in comfort. Looks like I still need to practice more. It's not good to get blisters so easily. Jiang Pingji was bored. She used the tip of her foot to stir up ripples on the surface of the water. When the blisters were no longer so hot and uncomfortable, she prepared to go ashore. However, before she could pull her feet out of the water, she found a tall young man in a lake blue scholarly robe standing not far away. He looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, with skin as delicate as flawless porcelain, bright eyes, red lips, and white teeth. His thin, moderately thick lips were curved. This was a face that easily gave people a good impression. It seemed that he was smiling at everyone. However, at this moment, the young man pursed his lips tightly with a hint of anger. The bunch of people in the live streaming room who were obsessed with looks started to shout again, and all kinds of flattering comments flooded the bullet screen. Durian-flavored milk. I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. What a beautiful young man. Ugh. Although I know that ancient times were very cruel and dangerous, the moment I saw this young man, all those hardships go to hell. Kujiao Qifan, I'm not convinced. Why were the ancient people so good-looking? Didn't they all say that they were ugly? Host Jingjing Xianxia. Although the host is my true love, the moment I saw the young man, I wanted to climb the wall. Such bullet screens almost blocked Jiang Pingji's vision. In the end, she had no choice but to block some of them. Jiang Pingji looked around and confirmed that there was no one else but her. Did that mean that the young man was angry at her? The young man's porcelain-like face showed a little anger. He looked at her accusingly as if she had done something infuriating. No. What else had she done other than soaking her feet and raising more than 20 horses? Could it be that those free-range horses went to take advantage of him? Just as he was puzzled, a bullet screen in the live broadcast room inspired him. Huohua. By the way, is that handsome young man drinking water downstream? It seemed that he was quite angry. Jiang Pingji was speechless. She lowered her head to look at her feet that were still soaking in the water. She then raised her head to look at the young man's almost red face. She was speechless. He was to blame? She calmly put on her socks and wooden clogs. Jiang Pingji whistled and the big white horse galloped over. Behind it, there were a total of 27 well-proportioned horses of different colors. Obviously, the big white horse had become the leader of the horses. Jiang Pingji didn't even need to deliberately drive it. Jiang Pingji murmured, "Nowadays horses are becoming intelligent." She sat on the horse and glanced at the young man who was still standing in the same place. She moved the reins and signaled the big white horse to go over. Jiang Pingji sat on the horse and bowed to the young man. "May I know your name?" The young man was very tall, but he was still a head shorter than the big white horse. When the big white horse lowered its head and snorted at him, the young man hurriedly stepped back with a bit of panic on his face. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji patted the horse's neck and signaled the little girl not to bully him on purpose. "Judging from your clothes, you don't look like a local." The young man calmed down and looked at her with mixed feelings. After a while he bowed back and said, "I'm from Langyi. You can call me Hanyu." Hanyu. What about his courtesy name? Jiang Pingji subconsciously thought of this question. After all, the ancient people's naming habits were really annoying. But then she remembered that only close friends or elders could use courtesy names. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "My name is Lu Shi. I'm a local of Hejian. I saw you staring at me just now. Do you have any difficulties?" The young man's face became even uglier when he heard the question. Jiang Pingji laughed in her heart. The audience in the streaming room complained that she was too mean. Hanyu was choked by her straightforward question, but he couldn't just say that he just drank some water to quench his thirst. Hanyu's face became even uglier when he thought of that. He had no choice. His water bag was empty and there was still some distance to go into the city. He could only fetch water from the spot. He didn't expect that someone would soak her feet in the water. Should he be glad that she was not using the toilet? Hanyu lowered his head subconsciously and looked at Jiang Pingji's feet, which were wearing socks. He felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. Jiang Pingji said again, "I was rude just now. My feet hurt a little because of the long journey. I just soaked my feet for a while and found that you were looking at me like that. I thought that the horses around me provoked you. Did they do anything to you?" Hanyu's pale face looked much better after hearing that. His white cheeks became rosy again. "The horses didn't make fun of me. Are they war horses?" Hanyu said. He glanced at the horses that Jiang Pingji mentioned. He seemed to find something and his pupils slightly shrank. "I don't know if they are war horses, but they are definitely good horses." Jiang Pingji smiled and stroked the mane of the big white horse. The horse rubbed against her palm intimately and licked it from time to time. "I took Whitey out for 2 laps and let it go to find food by itself. I didn't expect that it would bring back so many horses. I was also very surprised." Hanyu was very surprised. He looked at the big white horse with sparkling eyes and said, "This horse has a well-proportioned body and strong hooves. Its eyes are full of intelligence and it has a ferociousness that normal horses don't have. Is this a good horse from the northern borderline?" "It should be. My father specially sent it to me. It is said that it is a good horse that was carefully selected from the royal horse farm in the northern borderline." Jiang Pingji said, "I don't know much about horses, but Whitey is full of intelligence. It seems that it can understand what I said. In the whole family I am the only one who is close to it." Jiang Pingji's words were really shameless. Chapter 197. Compared to the white horse, Hanyu was more concerned about the other 27 horses. They were from the Meng's horse farm. Horses of such quality were usually provided to the Meng's army. Outsiders couldn't buy them. Now there were 27 more horses, which made Hanyu feel a little uneasy. So Hanyu asked, "Do you know who the owner of these horses is?" Jiang Pingji sneered. She never asked for the names of people she killed and there was no need to. They were all dead anyway. But she said, I don't know. Do you know? Han Yu said with certainty, this is a fine horse from the stable of the Mengs in Zhangzhou. Only those with a high status in the Meng's army are qualified to own such a fine horse. Lu Langjun is in trouble, Jiang Pingji said carelessly. Why? It's just a few animals carrying people. How can they kill people? Han Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly put on a serious face and said, not only will they kill people but they will also implicate the whole family. Is it that serious? Han Yu saw that she didn't believe him so he explained the stakes to her very seriously. Don't doubt me, Lu Langjun. There was a tragedy in Meng County in Zhangzhou. Someone stole a horse belonging to the Mengs and the whole family was involved. They were trampled to death on the horse farm. I didn't steal these horses. They came here by themselves. Jiang Pingji said seriously, but what you said reminds me of one thing. These horses are indeed easy to get into trouble. I have to find a way to get rid of them as soon as possible. Han Yu was speechless. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. Langjun, you said that I'm a thief. Since I've already taken the blame, why don't I just sell all the horses and make some money? No matter how angry the Mengs are, they have to find me first. Han Yu was alert and smart. He immediately understood why Jiang Pingji's attitude toward him had changed so much. He immediately apologized. You don't have to be so angry, Lu Langjun. I used that tragedy as an example to tell you to think twice before you act. The Meng family is powerful and arrogant. Ordinary people can't fight against them. I have no intention of slandering you for stealing. Jiang Pingji tightened her grip on the horse's belly and the white horse took 2 steps forward. She said proudly, it doesn't matter. Since I dared to accept these troublesome little fellows, I naturally have my own reasons. Seeing her like this, Han Yu didn't continue to insist. Maybe she really had the right to be arrogant and he would only annoy her if he tried to dissuade her. The two of them had only met by chance and there was a misunderstanding at the beginning. Naturally, there was nothing much to talk about and they soon parted ways. The livestream viewers felt that it was a pity. It was rare to see such a handsome, sunny boy. It would be a pity if they did not lick his boots for a while. To avoid encountering people who knew about horses, Jiang Pingji took a shortcut and leisurely let the white horse carry her to the farm. Wow, what a big horse. So high. The children in the village had never seen so many horses. A bunch of naughty children came forward, their faces full of curiosity. Everyone wanted to reach out and touch the horse's hooves, but Jiang Pingji didn't allow it. War horses were hot-tempered. If they accidentally angered one of them, they would lose their lives if they were rewarded with a hoof. Langjun, these. Jiang Pingji jumped off the horse. Xia, you came just in time. Ask Coach Meng to bring the horses into the farm. Remember to tie them all up. Suku thought that was not the point. The point was, didn't Langjun always say that he was very poor, and that he needed to be thrifty here and there, even to the extent of losing his mind? So, where did he get the money to buy so many war horses? Even though Suku didn't know much about horses, he still had the basic insight. He didn't know how good the horses were, but he knew that they were indeed excellent. So, where did Langjun kill people and set fires? How did he get so many? Suku accidentally blurted out what was on his mind. Jiang Pingji tilted her head and stared at him, which made his hair stand on end, as if he was going to explode in the next second. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pingji just nodded seriously and said, Xiaoyu, you know me best. Suku was dumbfounded. The viewers in the live stream almost burst out laughing. Although he was not as handsome as Han Yu, Suku was still very handsome. Langjun, you really killed people and set fires. Suku didn't know how to react. However, when he saw Jiang Pingji's half-smile, Suku suddenly realized that something was wrong. I killed people but I didn't set fires, Jiang Pingji said seriously and added, setting fire to the forest is a serious crime. In Jiang Pingji's era, wood resources were scarce. Only the rich and the aristocratic families could afford pure wood furniture. In order to protect the decreasing forest resources, the relevant regulations were introduced. Setting fire to the forest was a serious crime and it could lead to death. Suku heard that and felt slightly relieved. No, he didn't set fire, so he couldn't kill people. At that moment he carefully counted the number of horses. Minus the one that belonged to his Langjun, there were 27 left. 27? Thinking about the number and the killing that his Langjun said, he seemed to understand something. Anyway, I took them from the Mengs. It doesn't cost me anything. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and patted Suku's shoulder. But the horses raised by the Mengs have special marks. People who know horses can easily recognize them. This is going to be a problem. Before Suku could react, Jiang Pingji had already made a decision. Find a way to sell them. They can probably be worth a lot of money. The horses. Suku's mind flashed with the approximate market value of the horses. Horses used for transportation were usually not cheap, and a horse like this was worth dozens of times more. But won't it be a pity? Men always had some characteristics that never changed no matter what time it was. For example, men in Jiang Pingji's era had a special love for mechas. Some people even joked that mechas were men's true love. In this era, men seemed to be like this as well. They had a unique love for strong and healthy horses. Jiang Pingji said, I can keep them, but I don't think it's necessary. I killed those lackeys of the Mengs and only left one alive to report back. They know that these horses are in my hands. Suku was suddenly shocked and immediately sobered up. He was still very rational when it came to his personal interests and interests. If that's the case, we'd better find a way to sell the horses as soon as possible. It's fine even if the price is lower. We can't keep them and cause trouble. Suku had already started to calculate in his mind how much money and food the horses could bring them. Yes, but I don't know how to sell them. We'll need to find a slightly more professional person. Jiang Pingji smiled. The Mengs were a jinx to others, but they seemed to be a blessing to her. Chapter 198. According to Jiang Pingji, it would be better to sell the war horses so that the Mengs wouldn't trace them back to her. Suku even started to make a budget, but Meng Hun put forward a different opinion after he heard about it. I don't agree with your decision. The loss is too great. Meng Hun licked his dry lips and looked at the plump and strong war horses with a burning gaze. For a general, a horse that they liked was like a second companion. It's better to hide them in the mountains for a while and wait for the Mengs to die down before plotting other things. Jiang Pingji focused on the first sentence. How great is the loss? Meng Hun said, for example, a good war horse like this is worth 70 to 80 taels of silver. That's the price of a fair deal. If you sell it to a horse dealer privately, they will buy it at a much higher price. Usually, they will reduce the price by 40 to 50%. That much? Jiang Pingji asked. That's at least a horse dealer with a conscience. If they bully someone who doesn't know the trade, they will be even worse. War horses are different. If they have internal injuries, they will be worthless. That's why they are more expensive. But if they are sold privately, the price will be reduced even more. Meng Hun sighed and raised his hand to stroke the mane of a maroon warhorse. The horse was strong and the muscles under his palm were tight and full of strength. It was fascinating. Suku was in a dilemma. It would be a loss if he sold them, but it was too risky to keep them. Even if they were hidden deep in the mountains, they would still be found. Jiang Pingji looked down and thought for a while. I'll listen to you this time. Anyway, we got them out of nowhere. No matter how we deal with them, it won't be a loss. We will need to train riding and shooting in the future. With them, at least we don't have to buy extra horses. It will save us a lot of money. Suku asked, but if that's the case and someone finds their tracks and suspects? Jiang Pingji reacted quickly. When she agreed to Meng Hun's suggestion, she already had a solution in mind. It's not difficult. I originally wanted to move the troops training from the farm to the mountains, Jiang Pingji said. Jiang Pingji said, but not now. Find a way to hide these horses. It doesn't matter if they are exposed. The Mengs can't do anything to me. Jiang Pingji smiled innocently as she spoke. After all, I'm just a powerless aristocrat. How could I have ambushed 28 of them, killed 27 of them and left one alive? Isn't it more believable to say that Meng Hun did it? Suku almost couldn't hold back the smile on his face. Before Meng Hun joined the team you could trick him, but now that he was a friend you still want to trick him like this? Do you have any shame? What was eye-opening was that Meng Hun actually felt that it made sense. That's true. Ordinary people would definitely think so. They greeted each other, and Feng Jin welcomed the good-looking young man in a lake blue scholar's robe into the door. I was preparing for the assessment. I wanted to invite you, but I didn't expect your third brother to tell me that you accompanied the fourth prince to Hejian. It's not far, so I took a detour. Maybe I could meet you. I saw you from afar as soon as I entered the city. The young man had a bright smile on his face. He was not as reserved as ordinary people. His eyebrows were full of vitality. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. When you came at the right time. Do me a favor. What's wrong? Han Yu raised his eyebrows and smiled. Are you entangled with some passionate girl? They were friends who grew up together and they were the same age. Feng Jin let go of his usual calmness in front of Han Yu. Look at you. You're getting more and more improper. I really don't know how Master Yuanjing taught you. Feng Jin patted Han Yu's shoulder and whispered, the fourth prince likes to hang out in the brothels, but he calls me out every time. I can't stand it. Could it be that the fourth prince is interested in Huayu's beauty? Han Yu had an indescribable expression on his face. Feng Jin coughed and lowered his voice. Of course not. I don't like to go to those brothels. He didn't like to go there, but he was called out to go there. It was okay to refuse him once or twice, but he refused him every time. Even a fool would know something was wrong. One or two of them tried to be Master Yuanjing's disciples, but what was the result? It was either an exaggeration or an unworthy name. There were only a few people who could catch Han Yu's eye. Han Yu said, it's not too late to visit now. Feng Jin hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right. Because of the addition of Han Yu, Feng Jin specially wrote a visiting card. Otherwise, it would be too rude to bring someone he didn't know directly to his door. Unfortunately, the concierge told Feng Jin that his Langjun had been away for some time. Did Lanting say when he would come back? Feng Jin asked in a good temper. The gatekeeper thought for a moment and said, Langjun only said that he would come back before the city gate is locked. Before the city gate is locked? Looking up at the sky, it was obvious that he couldn't wait any longer. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you to tell Lanting that I've been here. The gatekeeper said respectfully, it's no trouble at all. Langjun is my Longjuan's good friend. This is what I should do. Feng Jin had no choice but to return to the carriage. Han Yu was playing with the jade tassel hanging from his waist with his fingers. Are you not at home? Feng Jin nodded. He thought for a moment and said, since you are here, why don't you go to Yaoji? Yaoji? Another strange name. It seemed that Huayu had made a lot of good friends while he was away from Shangjing. Feng Jin saw the confusion in his eyes and explained, Yaoji is my good friend. Her name is Lu Heng and she is also Lanting's cousin. Han Yu said bluntly, since I have nothing to do, I might as well go there. Feng Jin shook his head with a bitter smile at Han Yu's attitude. With Wenbin's temperament, if he encountered any setbacks in the future, he would suffer a lot. Jiang Pingji didn't come back until an hour before the city gate was locked. She rode a tall horse and slowly returned to the Lu's house. As soon as she came back, she heard from the gatekeeper that Feng Jin had come to see her. Huayu? Jiang Pingji asked, did he leave any other message? The gatekeeper thought for a moment and shook his head. Langjun only asked me to tell you that he had been here. He didn't say anything else. Oh, I see. Jiang Pingji felt relieved. It seemed that it was a normal visit and he didn't encounter any difficulties. But the gatekeeper hesitated. What? The gatekeeper stammered. The one who often goes with Feng Langjun has come to see you again. Jiang Pingji tried not to think too much. What did he mean by, always goes with Feng Jin? It felt like there was an affair going on between them. Did you say that Wuma Jun came again today? Since the last time at Ingchun House, the frequency of Wuma Jun's visits was frighteningly high. But Jiang Pingji often went out, so she didn't run into him. The gatekeeper said awkwardly, yes, I heard from other servants. He seems to want to marry the second Yangzi. What? Marry the second Yangzi of the Lu's house? Jiang Pingji was stunned for a while. Then she remembered that there was a sister who had never shown her face in the Lu's house. However, her stepsister was not even 9 years old this year, right? Didn't Wuma Jun want to marry Jingxian? Why did he change his target to his sister of a concubine? Or could it be that this person wanted both of them? Jiang Pingji's eyes turned cold. She pursed her lips and looked extremely unhappy. After returning to the house, she went straight to see Lu Shi. He was reading some documents seriously. Lanting, you're here. Lu Shi put the book aside and smiled. Sit next to me. Jiang Pingji asked directly, Father, what do you mean? If Lu Shi had not hinted or misled Wuma Jun, he wouldn't have known that there was a daughter of a mistress in the Lu's house. For some reason, although the siblings were in the house, they were scarily invisible in the eyes of others. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Lu Shi asked, "What?" "There is a rumor in the world that Wu Majun wants to marry my sister." Lu Shi said, "It's not a rumor. I did agree to it." Jiang Pingji. "Lanting, I swore in front of your mother's grave," Lu Shi said. "I won't let those who hurt her and this family live a good life." "But my sister," Lu Shi said meaningfully, "I only have your mother in my life." Jiang Pingji suddenly understood. The children in the house were not Lu Shi's biological children? If that was the case, she couldn't help but look at Lu Shi's head. Chapter 200. "Father, you mean?" "My sister." Jiang Pingji withdrew her gaze. She did not want to be too obvious and hurt his dignity as a man. "It's just a grudge between the previous generation. I'll tell you in detail when everything is settled." Lu Shi caressed her hair and said gently, "You don't have to listen to the intrigues in the backyard. You don't want to dirty your ears and change your temperament. Did you agree to marry my sister to Wu Majun to avenge my mother?" Jiang Pingji asked. At the same time she was deep in thought. If that was the case, there must be something special about this stepsister's identity. "Yes, it's a very important part." Lu Shi's lips curled into a sinister smile. It was as if there was a cold lake deep in his eyes. "I wanted to wait a few more years, but Wu Majun came to me on his own. He must have some ulterior motive. I'd like to see his expression when he finds out the truth. It'll be interesting." She killed Amin for her own ambition. She should pay the price. She asked, "Who killed my mother?" Lu Shi did not answer her. He sighed and said, "I told you. It's a grudge between the previous generation. I don't want you to be involved. I know where your ambition lies. The world is vast and that is your goal. I, your father, will settle the score for your mother." But Jiang Pingji felt that things were not that simple. Lu Shi was hiding an important truth. "If you want to do something for your mother, then promise me." As Lu Shi spoke, he leaned forward and whispered in her ear word by word. It was as if he was making a solemn vow. "Don't let anyone get their hands on the throne of the world. You can only win. You can't lose." Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. Even though Lu Shi had learned some things from Master Liaochen, it was the first time he told her that she had to win. She asked in a low voice, "Will the person who killed my mother fight with me?" Lu Shi couldn't give a very clear answer to this question because he didn't know the details. The only thing he could say was, "I don't know, but if you want to be the ruler of the world, it won't be wrong. Who cares if she will fight with you? She won't be able to beat you. Just remember today's conversation in your heart. Even if you are talking in your sleep at night, you must not leak even half a word. You must not leak anything." Even though Jiang Pingji didn't mind Lu Shi's serious advice, she had to take it seriously. "What's more?" Lu Shi smiled sarcastically. How could someone who only knows how to suck up to you compete with you? What could she rely on? Tossing and turning men's bodies, seductively asking for sex. It's the biggest joke in the world. A woman. Jiang Pingji was surprised. She thought Lu Shi wanted to deal with a man. Lu Shi obviously didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. His daughter was too cunning. The more he talked, the more information he would leak. Chapter 201. Lu Heng and Feng Jin were friends. In the past, when they met, they would talk about everything under the sun, or exchange opinions on politics. Now they had another topic to discuss. Lu Heng's cousin Feng Jin's good friend Lu Lanting. The former had a secret brother complex, while the latter admired Jiang Pingji and treated her as a best friend. They had a lot to talk about. At first Han Yu was just listening to them out of boredom. But after a while he became more interested in the Lanting they were talking about. When Lu Heng heard Feng Jin say that Han Yu was Master Yuanjing's disciple, he couldn't help but be in awe. He looked at Han Yu with even more enthusiasm. His cousin was going to Langyi to study. If he could find out Master Yuanjing's preferences earlier, it might come in handy. With this in mind, Lu Heng tried to get more information from Feng Jin. Han Yu's lips curled into a smile and he gave Feng Jin a meaningful look. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. He guessed that this was probably what Lanting meant by brother Khan. Lu Heng had good intentions. He would just pretend that he didn't see it. I can understand that Yaoji loves her brother. It's just that teacher has already taken in his full number of disciples. I'm afraid he won't be taking in any more. Han Yu shook his head regretfully and said, but Langyi Academy still welcomes you. If you go to Langyi in the future, you can be my classmate." This time Feng Jin, who was watching from the side, was surprised. "Already full? Master Yuanjing has found the fourth person he has been looking for?" This time it was Lu Heng's turn to be confused. Why couldn't he understand what these two were saying? Feng Jin could not help but sigh when he saw that she was still puzzled. "Yaoji, there's something you don't know. When Master Yuanjing took back the 3 cities and returned to Langya County, he performed a divination for himself. He was destined to have 4 disciples. A few years ago, I heard that you had already accepted 3 disciples. I thought that with Lanting's talent he would be the 4th disciple that you're looking for. I didn't expect that you already have one. In terms of students, all the students in Langyi Academy could be considered as Yuanjing's students. However, there could only be 4 real disciples. This. Lu Heng's face was filled with disappointment. Although he belittled his cousin, he was still very proud of him. How could a student and a personal disciple be the same? For the former, Master Yuanjing only came out to give lectures occasionally, but for the latter he taught everything he knew. AI. Lu Heng sighed and then said somewhat open-mindedly, "If I get it, it's my fortune. If I don't, it's my fate. However, I heard from Huaiyu that Master Yuanjing was painstakingly looking for his 4th disciple. This is really puzzling." He emphasized the word diligently. Chapter 202. Although he didn't see Lu Lanting, who was praised by Feng Jin, Lu Heng had left a good impression on Hanyu. "Hey, 4th Langjun is back?" Feng Jin and Hanyu came back together. They opened the curtain and saw a carriage parked in front of them. It was the carriage that Wuma Jun had taken during the day. What a coincidence. When Bin and I got off at the same time. Obviously Wuma Jun had also noticed it. He was unhappy to see Feng Jin stepping on the stool and another person in the carriage. Wuma Jun didn't like Feng Jin's family background. Feng Jin wasn't a member of the royal family. What right did he have to live a better life than him? What right did he have to be more talented and outstanding than him? Although he was polite to Feng Jin on the surface, he didn't respect him that much. However, when Hanyu stepped on the stool and came out of the carriage, Wuma Jun's unhappiness disappeared instantly. He put on a faint smile as if his previous carelessness and disgust didn't exist. Unfortunately, neither Feng Jin nor Hanyu were easy to deal with. To put it bluntly, among the 3 of them except for Wuma Jun, whose acting skills were a bit bad, the other 2 were going to be best actors in the future. Before Wuma Jun could say anything, Feng Jin introduced Hanyu after greeting him. "This is my good friend. His surname is Han and his name is Yu. He is Master Yuanjing's disciple." Feng Jin emphasized the words Master Yuanjing's disciple, hinting that Wuma Jun shouldn't be so embarrassed that he couldn't move when he saw a beauty. Fortunately, Wuma Jun wasn't hopeless. He immediately withdrew his eager eyes and adopted a reserved plan. Taking a step back in order to advance, he could first establish a good relationship with them. Yes, in this era of masculinity, men might not be completely safe. Hanyu saw the eagerness in Wuma Jun's eyes. He felt a chill in his heart. The hair on his arms stood up and he got goosebumps. He suddenly regretted agreeing to Feng Jin's request. Wuma Jun obviously didn't care about men and women. He didn't want to get himself involved. Thinking of this, Hanyu came up with a plan in his mind. He slowly revealed a sneer. However, in Wuma Jun's eyes, it was a stunning beauty, who was satisfied with him. He had to admit that it was a big misunderstanding. It made Hanyu feel nauseous. Wuma Jun didn't like Feng Jin, but he didn't like Feng Jin being out of his control either, so he asked about his schedule. Feng Jin smiled faintly. He dealt with it flawlessly and Wuma Jun could not find any mistakes. 4th Langjun, have you made any progress in visiting the Lu residence today? How could Feng Jin not see that the other party was trying his best to hide it? If it wasn't for the fact that he still had some brains, he would have already flown into the sky. He must have encountered something good. If he married her, he would worship her as a shrine. He could not stop him from being a playboy, not to mention that she was not married yet. Seeing his attitude, Feng Jin sneered in his heart. He thought that Jiang Pingji had seen through Wuma Jun's nature. Who would feel at ease if their daughter married to him? He had just reached an agreement with Lu Shi to be his son-in-law, and now he was coveting Wen Bin's beauty. What a scumbag. Wuma Jun wanted to talk to Hanyu through the night, but Hanyu's IQ and literature were much higher than his. There was nothing to talk about. I'm surprised. Wumajun is so lustful. Why have I not seen him do anything to you after so many days of following him? Han Yu had nothing to talk about with Wumajun, but he had endless things to talk about with his good friend Feng Jin, so they decided to share a room. Feng Jin said helplessly, "My beauty is like a jade pearl on a plate. How can I compete with Wen Bin's beauty?" Han Yu was speechless. It was not the Feng Jin he knew who would say such sarcastic words. Who taught him to praise others in the open but to insult others in the dark? Jiang Pingji thought that Feng Jin was being sarcastic. Was it her fault? Han Yu did not want to show any weakness. He teased. Wumajun mentioned that he was going to be engaged to the daughter of the Lu family. Why did you lose your composure? Chapter 203. Seeing that Feng Jin wanted to deny it, Han Yu pursed his lips and smiled. Don't play dumb, Huayu. How can you deny it? Feng Jin knew his friend's temperament. He knew that if he didn't give an explanation today, Han Yu wouldn't let him sleep all night. Feng Jin thought of a perfect excuse and explained calmly. A few days ago I met Chief Lu by chance and knew that he was a gentle and generous elder. Do you think Chief Lu couldn't see through Wumajun's treacherous thoughts? If he had seen through it, why did he agree to marry his daughter to Wumajun? To put it bluntly, isn't it like pushing his own blood relatives into the fire pit? Yes, both he and Feng Jin could see through Wumajun's disguise. There was no reason that someone like Chief Lu couldn't see through it. Moreover, Huayu had said that Chief Lu was a gentle and family-oriented person in private. How could he not care about his only daughter's marriage? So, that's why you lost your composure? Han Yu squinted his eyes. It seemed that he still had doubts about Feng Jin's words. Feng Jin said seriously, otherwise? The daughter of the Lu family is not even 9 years old and I will be married in 2 years. What kind of relationship could there be? Besides, the daughter of the Lu family has been raised in the boudoir since she was a child. She rarely goes out. Even her brother Lanting rarely sees her. How could I, a man outside, have any relationship with her? It's okay that you are a playboy, but how could you slander the innocence of a noble girl? Han Yu lost interest and sat on the side of the bed sulkily. He changed the topic and asked, if so, according to what Huayu said, why did Chief Lu do this? Feng Jin couldn't figure it out either, but he was secretly relieved. Han Yu was not easy to deal with. He would be finished if he gave himself away. Feng Jin shook his head in confusion. Well, I don't understand either. I think Chief Lu has other considerations. How could a man with a generous and family-oriented temperament as well as extremely sharp judgment and experience not see through Wumajun's clumsy disguise? It didn't make sense at all. Unless there was a compelling reason that made Chief Lu act in this way. Han Yu's face was filled with the word interested, but Feng Jin was not curious at all. Whether Lu Shi married his daughter or not was his family's business. Why should two unrelated men get involved? As usual, Feng Jin read a book in front of the lamp for a while. When he felt a little sleepy, he decided to go to bed. As soon as he lay down, Han Yu said, I hope it won't involve politics. County Chief Lu's methods are a little creepy. Feng Jin was secretly amused. County Chief Lu is such a character. If it's not for the sake of the imperial court, could it be for a personal grudge? What kind of logic was it to marry the son he had raised for a few years to Wumajun just because of a personal grudge? Han Yu couldn't figure out Lu Shi's intentions. Forget it. My head hurts if I think too much. The two of them talked about their daily lives and learned about the things that had happened to each other over the years. They couldn't help but sigh. All of a sudden, Han Yu remembered Master Yuanjing's worries. Mister has been rather worried recently. The aristocratic families have already flourished to such an extent. If we don't restrain ourselves, I'm afraid something bad will happen. Both of them were still awake and were chatting to pass the time. Feng Jin sneered, rein in at the precipice? How could they do that? It wasn't that no one had realized this problem. The point was that the aristocratic families were like a carriage that was slipping down the slope and they couldn't control it anymore. If the future ruler of the world is also a member of the aristocratic families, maybe we can continue our glory. But what if he isn't? Even if he is a member of the aristocratic families, who can tolerate the royal family being controlled by the aristocratic families? Or even lower than them? The aristocratic families have crossed the line. Han Yu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Feng Jin to have such a bold idea. However, Han Yu couldn't refute Feng Jin's words. Nowadays, the royal family of Dongqing was the Wuma family, but the real helmsman was the 4 aristocratic families. Which of the important positions in each province and county wasn't from the aristocratic families? How many children of poor families were there? Dongqing had always emphasized culture and restrained martial arts. Their military was weak and almost all of them were lost in the battlefield in the north borderline. If the aristocratic families didn't agree, the emperor's order couldn't even be passed out of the Xiangyang palace. Wasn't the royal family afraid of those aristocratic families? Afraid? Of course they were afraid. Who would feel comfortable if they had the world but couldn't enjoy the supreme power? However, the royal family of Dongqing had gradually fallen into a disadvantageous position in the open and secret battle with the aristocratic families. They couldn't be majestic at all. Fortunately, the interests of the aristocratic families weren't united. Each had their own conflicts. The royal family of Dongqing was also in a strange balance. They were muddle-headed in front of the royal family and kept thinking about taking back the power. They kept playing dirty tricks. As the legitimate son of the Feng family, it was not easy for Feng Jin to see the drawbacks so clearly. I didn't think about it before, but after I came to Hejian and met County Chief Lu, I was suddenly enlightened. It was as if the fog in front of him was blown away by the wind, and he saw the truth. The chaos in Hu County was caused by natural disasters and sabotage, but the sabotage was greater than the natural disasters. She secretly glanced at Han Yu and found that he was also looking at her feet. Fei Shuang Dianmo. I'm a newbie in the live broadcast room. I heard that the streamer can see through a person's underwear at first sight. Then, do you know the size of this handsome young man? What is your 3 measurements? I think his fingers are so beautiful. They would be perfect for playing the piano. Jiang Pingji almost laughed when she saw the bullet screen. If the other party hadn't reminded her, she would have forgotten about it. Host V. This young man is indeed very good-looking, but if you think about the image of him taking off his pants to go to the toilet, or the image of him having constipation, I don't think he's so fairy-like. This kid has been suffering from excessive internal heat recently, and it's not good for his bowels. The audience in the live broadcast room, Jiang Pingji thought she could entertain herself by ruining other people's enjoyment of beauty. Host V. As for his size, I think the girl who has used him has the most right to speak. He's young, but he's already experienced a lot. He has 2 concubines who warm his bed. He's not messy, but he's not clean by the standards of your world. Jiang Pingji turned Han Yu's background upside down in the streaming room. Everyone looked at Han Yu and felt that he was a handsome, fairy-like young man. But when they saw the bullet screen that the streamer posted, they felt that it hurt their eyes. Streamer, why are you so cruel? Can't you just let them lick the handsome young man in peace? Xian, it hurts my eyes when I imagine the handsome young man squatting in the toilet with a conflicted face. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, hurts my eyes +1. The streamer is really a veteran in the field of teaching people tirelessly. Jiang Pingji could tease and tease the audience in the live broadcast room, but it was impossible for her to say what she said before. If she had a grudge against Han Yu, she wouldn't be merciful with her words. But now it seemed that Feng Jin's friend obviously knew Han Yu, so she couldn't tease him rudely. Feng Jin noticed the weird atmosphere between Jiang Pingji and Han Yu, and a guess came to his mind. Could it be that the 2 of you have already met? Jiang Pingji laughed in her heart. Yes, more than just met. Han Yu also laughed secretly. What a small world. Before I entered the city yesterday, I met Lu Langjun and had a brief conversation with him. Feng Jin was overjoyed and said, I guess it's fate. Jiang Pingji laughed. Doomed fate. However, it was just the beginning. There were surprises everywhere in life. For example, when Feng Jin introduced Han Yu's courtesy name to her, Jiang Pingji was strangely silent. She stared at Han Yu as if she wanted to see through the layers of clothes and see through him. Han Yu subconsciously took a step back and said reluctantly, Lu Langjun, is there something wrong with my appearance? It's very neat. Chapter 205. If that's the case, you also saw me in your dreams? Han Yu asked with a faint smile. He looked friendly, but there was a hint of judgment in his eyes. Who would believe such nonsense? Yes, another loophole in Jiang Pingji's story was that there was another person in it, Han Yu. If you paid attention, you would notice that she asked Qing Yumo and Wei Zixiao in surprise after hearing Han Yu's courtesy name. If the story was not contradictory, then Han Yu should have appeared in her dream. Otherwise she must have made it up. Jiang Pingji thought that Han Yu would be ashamed, but he nodded. Yes. It's a pity that the dream was hazy. I could only see the silhouette but not the face. I thought it was just a dream, but I didn't expect it to be real. The viewers in the streaming room were amazed by Jiang Pingji's acting skills. Jinchuan can liang. I only admire the streamer's acting skills. She did it all in one take. It was such nonsense, but even she herself believed it. Life is like a drama. Even the streamer can win an Oscar if she depends on her acting skills. Chofeng Cece. Oscar is nothing. No matter how good the best actor and best actress are, can they be 100% in character all day? Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan. Well, I know the streamer is lying, but she said it so confidently that I am beginning to doubt her. Even the viewers in the streaming room began to doubt their own judgment, let alone Han Yu, who didn't know much about her. Han Yu's mouth twitched. He said in a stiff tone, "So, it is fate that I met Lanting." Jiang Pingji readily accepted his advice and said, "Yes, such a fate, it will be a good story to tell." Feng Jin believed her and said with surprise, "People say that what you think about in the day is what you dream about at night." But Lanting was born and grew up in Hejian County. He had never heard of the names of Wen Bin and the other two. Wei Zixiao's courtesy name was only recently given. Lanting could actually dream of such a scene. Maybe it was a sign of fate? If I go to Laiyi in the future, I might be able to meet my dream friend. Han Yu was still doubtful, but he was more convinced after hearing what Feng Jin said. Although this speech was a little dreamy and romantic, it couldn't ignore the bigger picture. Let's rewind and take a look at what Jiang Pingji said. She saw a fairy beauty bathing and burning incense in the Jasper Lake. She wanted to go closer to ask, but she heard someone call her Zixiao. The beauty responded and called him friend Demo. In other words, the background was the bathtub. She was taking a bath. Han Yu couldn't imagine it. Zixiao was taking a bath in his dream. What was he doing in his dream? Although Lu Shi was a young boy who had yet to grow up, and the scene in the dream was still hazy, she could only vaguely make out the silhouettes of people. He always says that the appearance is given to him by his parents. Children can't choose whether they are beautiful or ugly. Isn't the essence of a skeleton? In this era, it was dangerous for a woman to be good-looking, but it was not necessarily safe for a man to be good-looking. A skeleton? Jiang Pingji smiled. This guy is interesting. How could he not be interesting? In this era, one's appearance affected one's fate as an official, and one's appearance was also an important criterion for being an official. But that guy said that appearance was not that important. Otherwise, he was just standing there and talking, pretending to be serious. Or he really thought so and he was quite aware of it. Han Yu knew that Jiang Pingji would leave for Laiyi in a few months. He smiled and said, "If so, we will be classmates by then. But Lanting, you don't have to rush. You can go to Laiyi in 3 or 4 months. Why? It was Feng Jin who asked. Han Yu said helplessly, "Huaiyu, did you forget that in 3 months, the students who passed the initial assessment will go to Shangjing for the final assessment? This year there are many students who passed the preliminary assessment. Master Yuanjing may personally escort them to Shangjing. I remember that Lu County Chief is this year's General Assessment Officer. He will also go to Shangjing." If Jiang Pingji went to Laiyi according to the original schedule, half of the academy would be empty. The most important thing was that Master Yuanjing would not be there. She thought for a while and said, "If so, I will go to Shangjing with my father. After the assessment, I will follow Master Yuanjing to Laiyi. It will be on the way." From a prince's point of view, Wu Ma Jun's thoughts were understandable. Unfortunately, this person's vision was so narrow. So what if he ascended the throne? Would the 3 tribes of the north borderline give up their covetous eyes on Dongqing? Wouldn't the other 4 countries covet Dongqing? More importantly, did Wu Ma Jun have the ability to restrain the increasingly powerful and lawless family tycoons? Probably not. If he had such foresight, he would not have gone to the Wang consortium. Once he ascended to the throne with the help of the Wang family, the aristocratic families would have complete control over the royal family. Wu Ma Jun would only be a puppet emperor. If Dongqing wanted to continue the throne, they could not allow the aristocratic families to develop and expand unscrupulously. Feng Jin could not say these words and he was not in the position to say them. He could only bury them deep in his heart. Although they were going to be separated the next day, neither Feng Jin nor Jiang Pingji were pretentious. They were still talking and laughing. It was just a temporary separation, not an eternal one. Without separation, how could there be the joy of meeting an old friend in a foreign land? On the way back, Han Yu looked at Feng Jin thoughtfully and said, Huai Yu is very unhappy. Feng Jin closed his eyes. The situation is getting worse and worse. I really don't know how many times such a situation will happen. Han Yu was puzzled. He did not know where Feng Jin's worry came from. If the world is in chaos, Huai Yu can show his talents. Judging from Lu Langjun, he is not an ordinary person. Maybe in the future, you can have a friendship with him. Of course, if the two of them were to assist their respective kings, then they could only do their own things. Feng Jin heard that and the corner of his mouth twitched. He felt that Han Yu and Jiang Pingji were on the same side. Both of them had restless temperaments and loved to stir up trouble at the drop of a hat. Although the royal family of Dongqing was declining, it was not destroyed yet. Now they were thinking about chaos. How could the royal family endure it? It could be seen that in the eyes of the aristocratic families, the royal family of Dongqing did not live up to its name. With a soft sigh, he dissipated into the air and disappeared. The next day, Jiang Pingji got up early and went to the Finyu Pavilion outside the city to bid farewell to Feng Jin. The weather had started to warm up, but there was a cold wind blowing from time to time, making people's clothes rustle. Looking at Feng Jin's back, Jiang Pingji, who was originally emotionless, felt a little emotional. When will we meet again? She did not know whether they would be enemies or friends the next time they met. Jiang Pingji kept her emotions in check. She put a finger to her lips and whistled. White was already running towards her. Let's go. She got on the horse and held the reins with both hands. The carriages in the distance had become a small dot and Feng Jin was nowhere to be seen. White snorted and galloped toward the city gate. Ever since the attack on the Mengs, Jiang Pingji liked the feeling of galloping more and more. Second Langjun, the people from the carpentry workshop are here. They are waiting for you in the mansion. As soon as they got back, the gatekeeper came forward to take the reins. Jiang Pingji's expression was cold and displeased at first, but when she heard that someone from the carpentry workshop was here, her eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if there were the brightest stars in them, which made people happy. Someone from the carpentry workshop? Where are they now? Take me there. Feng Jin was the first friend Jiang Pingji had made in this world, so he meant something to her. She did not show it on her face or say it, but she was still reluctant to leave Hejin County. However, compared to the big picture, these small sentiments were insignificant. The gatekeeper was also smiling and bowed. He's waiting for you in the mansion. Don't worry, Second Langjun. Jiang Pingji did not listen to the gatekeeper. She walked like the wind and the maids made way for her. To save time, she said, You don't have to greet me. Go do your own things. She opened the door quickly but not rudely. A few craftsmen in linen clothes had been kneeling for a long time. No need for small talk. Just tell me, how is the crossbow I asked you to make? Jiang Pingji sat down without hesitation and skipped the complicated etiquette of the craftsmen. They looked at each other and one of the craftsmen spoke on behalf of the craftsmen. It's a success. Chapter 207. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pingji's streaming time was fixed. She would start streaming in the morning after waking up and washing up. She would stop streaming after dinner at night. If there were other special streaming tasks, she would adjust the streaming time according to the situation. It was the normal streaming time and the streaming room was already filled with 10,000 viewers. Occasionally, someone would leave the room out of boredom, but another viewer would immediately fill in. Every trap in the streaming room depended on one's internet speed, hand speed, and luck. Chi Yun. Compared to those innocent female protagonists in dramas, I like the streamer more. Especially when her eyes lit up just now. Really, it felt like she was electrified. That indescribable throbbing as if she was electrified. Pianxin Diawu. I think that feeling should be hot-blooded, right? When Jiang Pingji's eyes lit up, the viewers in the streaming room always felt that it should be accompanied by aggressive and passionate background music. In an instant, it could stir up people's blood and make their pores open wide. Quick, let me have a look. Jiang Pingji was born in an era where weapons of war were extremely advanced. She had even piloted and commanded aircraft carriers, let alone other portable weapons. It could be said that unless she was in a more advanced interstellar civilization, there was no weapon that could amaze her. Obviously, such a thing could not exist in this extremely backward and conservative society. Of course, she did not need it. In this ancient era, as long as she had a weapon that was more advanced than the average, she would have a higher chance of winning in terms of hardware. Why use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? It was a bold attempt to get the craftsman in the carpentry room to research the improved crossbow. Because of Jiang Pingji's order, the craftsman put in a lot of effort to research it day and night. How could they dare to neglect it? Seeing that she was so excited, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. After presenting the latest product, the craftsman carefully watched Jiang Pingji take it, afraid that she would accidentally hurt herself. Jiang Pingji's smile disappeared, and she seriously fiddled with the slightly rough finished crossbow. The crossbow was bigger than she expected. The body of the bow was 3 feet and 3 inches long, and the bowstring was 2 feet and 5 inches long. The body of the bow was dyed dark brown, and one could smell the strong smell of paint when they got close to it. It was quite heavy in her hands, but it was not too heavy and it was convenient to carry around. The craftsman had to figure out the materials for the overall structure, and Jiang Pingji only provided them with data. To be able to produce a finished product in such a short period of time, regardless of the final results of the experiment, this attitude was worthy of praise. Chapter 208. There were also crossbows in this era and they had been developed several times. However, they had many drawbacks. The shooting range was short, the crossbow was heavy, and it was inconvenient to carry. It also had certain requirements on the environment or else it would be hard to maintain. The overall production process and cost were also high. Due to various reasons, only a small number of people could afford to use these crossbows and they were not widely used. Even if they were, Jiang Pingji would not like them. She played with the semi-finished crossbow in her hand. The crossbow arm, crossbow bow, bowstring and crossbow mechanism barely matched the data given by her. After her improvement, the time needed to load the arrows was greatly reduced, which also improved the mobility and flexibility of the crossbow. I don't know the cost of the finished crossbow and the production time. If the cost is high and the production time is long, it is impossible to produce it on a large scale with the current manpower in the carpentry workshop. What's more, it is a secret that needs to be kept. I can't let more craftsmen participate in the production. Jiang Pingji pouted and frowned. She was not satisfied with the current situation. However, she did not have many people working for her now. Even if she equipped each of them with a modified crossbow, she should be able to afford it according to her family's wealth. To prevent the crossbow from attracting attention, Jiang Pingji wrapped it in a white cloth and left the loose house with a dozen arrows of different models. To the farm. The loose house was not suitable for testing the improved crossbow. It was not that she was afraid that the servants would leak the secret, nor was she worried that she would accidentally hurt others. It was just that the mansion did not have a spacious place suitable for testing. According to her calculation, the shooting range of the improved crossbow was a bit far. She did not ride a horse this time. She sat in the carriage and asked the groom to drive her there. With the help of Meng Hun, the training of the troops was officially on track, and the effect was much more significant than before. After she got off the carriage, she saw a group of shirtless troops carrying a 3-foot-long log on their shoulders running past her step by step. At the end of the line was the petite Nongqin. She was also dressed in brown. She was sweaty and her lips were pale. Nongqin had obviously seen her. Her eyes were slightly twinkling and she became more stubborn. Jiang Pingji curled her lips slightly. When she passed by, she heard her voice. "If you are tired, you can stop and rest for a while. After all, you are a weak woman." She emphasized the word, weak. Hearing this, Nongqin opened her eyes wide. However, after a moment, she gritted her teeth and ran past her with her head down. Her footsteps were heavy and slow. Chapter 209. Not only was Nongqin dumbfounded, but the other men were also speechless. The live streaming room was in an uproar. "Xuanxiang Taishou, host, don't scare me. How can I hit the target from so far away?" "Fengji Liaoan, I believe the host can do it, but Nongqin can't do it, right?" "Han Yutong, I can see another girl who is about to evolve into a tough man." The audience in the live streaming room presented facts and reasoned that the possibility of Nongqin doing it was zero. It was not that they didn't believe it, but it was too unbelievable. Meng Hun thought so too. With his eyesight, Jiang Pingji was at least 200 steps away from the target. Even a heavy bough of 1 pickle could not reach that distance. She needed a bough of more than 2 pickle. But 2 pickle? That was 200 kilograms, which was much heavier than an adult man. How could a weak girl like Nongqin draw a bough of 2 pickle? Can you do it? Jiang Pingji asked her. Nongqin was hesitant, but she made up her mind when she heard Jiang Pingji's question. Langjun, I can do it for you if you teach me. Jiang Pingji smiled. Smart girl, come here. I'll teach you. She untied the white cloth that wrapped the improved crossbow in her hand, and it fell to the ground, revealing the crossbow. Meng Hun was stunned when he saw it. However, what surprised everyone was yet to come. Jiang Pingji whispered in Nongqin's ear, telling her how to use the improved crossbow. This crossbow has a strong recoil. When you use it, you must stabilize your lower body and learn how to release the force. If your lower body is not stable, the crossbow in your hand will deviate a little, which will cause you to miss the target. If the enemy doesn't die, you will. Jiang Pingji's voice was like a clear spring in the mountains, with a refreshing coldness that made people subconsciously focus their attention. Although the improved crossbow had a buffer and shock absorber, it could greatly reduce the instantaneous force of the arrow. However, this strength was still a bit strenuous for Nongqin now. You have enough time to aim at the target with the sighting device and balance your body. You don't have to be like a bow and arrow. You can't keep the bow and arrow open for a long time after pulling it back. Jiang Pingji helped Nongqin adjust herself and said with encouragement, "This is the right angle." As soon as she finished her words, an arrow flew out of the crossbow. Even though Nongqin was mentally prepared, she was still shaken by the strong recoil. She staggered and fell to the ground. Before she could get up, her ears were filled with exclamations. Nongqin was very lucky. Although the arrow didn't hit the bull's eye, it still hit the target and cracked half of it. The viewers in the live stream all sent a string of exclamation marks. They seemed to be quite shocked. This distance was already more than 200 steps. As for the others, she took the improved crossbow from Meng Hun's hands and pulled the string with her arms skillfully, unlike Nongqin. Bang! An arrow target exploded from the center. Jiang Pingji's body was as steady as a pine tree. She didn't even shake a bit. She continued to pull the string and load the arrow. There was another sound of the arrow target exploding. It was completely broken. Meng Hun just realized that Jiang Pingji didn't aim at all. Or in other words, when she looked at the target, she already knew that she could hit the target without deliberately aiming. What kind of terrifying eyesight and accuracy was that? In this world, there's nothing that can't be done. The reason why I can't do it is because I don't know how to do it. She put down the crossbow and looked back with a bright smile. At that moment, it was as if the sun in the sky was overshadowed by her smile. Nongqin felt hot in her heart. Her eyes were burning as if there was an inexplicable force filling her limbs. She wanted to be like her Langjun. She pulled the string lightly, her body was as still as a pine tree and her back was straight and unbent. It was as if she couldn't give in even if the sky collapsed. Yes, she was a woman, but so was her Langjun, who was younger than her. If she could do it, why couldn't she? Even if her current life was very difficult and the endless training made her physically and mentally exhausted, she felt very free and carefree. She couldn't imagine going back to her old life, and she didn't want to be forced to marry by her parents. She didn't want to live a mediocre life around a mediocre man, a group of noisy radishes and a stove. Those muddle-headed, uneventful days had worn her numb. Could that be considered living? Strong thoughts filled Nongqin's mind and she was obsessed. Chapter 210. Nongqin looked at Jiang Pingji firmly and knelt down. The wound on her shoulder was still bleeding and stained her clothes. Langjun, please teach me. Jiang Pingji looked at Nongqin with a faint smile. Nongqin felt uncomfortable under her gaze. After a long time she said, "What do you think I can teach you?" Nongqin was stunned. She didn't understand what she meant. Jiang Pingji said, "You practice hard, you work hard, and you don't want to admit defeat. That's enough. What I can teach you is how to maximize your advantages and make your body stronger. You have to rely on yourself for the rest." Women were at a disadvantage because of their physical structure, but it didn't mean that women were weak. In Jiang Pingji's world, the Federal Army was roughly divided into 14 corps. The corps commander was the highest commanding officer and was directly under the command of the commander-in-chief. Each corps had different responsibilities. For example, the 7th Corps led by Jiang Pingji belonged to the first echelon. It could be said that apart from the commander-in-chief, the corps commander was the most powerful person. In Jiang Pingji's generation, there were 8 female corps commanders and 6 male corps commanders. In the Federation, the strong were respected regardless of gender. Who could say that the corps commanders were weaker than the 6 male corps commanders because they were female? In fact, Jiang Pingji's personal combat ability could be ranked in the top 3 among the corps commanders. Physical structure wasn't absolute. It all depended on whether one had the desire to be strong. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn how to attack faster. If others are faster than you, then you have to learn how to kill them with one blow. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn the art of war and how to lead troops to war. You should never focus on your own shortcomings. You don't have to compare your shortcomings with others' strengths. It's not necessary. Every word Jiang Pingji said made Nongqin's heart pound uncontrollably, as if something was about to break out of her cocoon. She said, "Get up. You came to me to teach you something. I should teach you something." Nongqin stood up. Her knees were covered in dust. "I will come to the farm every day for a while. It's up to you what you can learn." Jiang Pingji raised her hands and pinched Nongqin's limbs. She said seriously, "The condition of your muscles and bones is fine. Is there a massage after training?" The massage list given by Jiang Pingji was not simple. It was prepared for military school students. It could maximize the effect of training, stimulate muscle nerve activity, and reduce the sequelae of the previous day's training. It could achieve twice the result with half the effort. Their clothes were old and tattered and they were emaciated. Their eyes were numb. These damned beasts. A white-haired old beggar covered his face and sobbed as he avoided the soldiers. He was holding a skinny child in his arms. Upon closer inspection, the child's face was pale. There were a few bruises on his face. His eyes were closed and he had stopped breathing. The little beggar was picked up by the old beggar. He had been raised since he could speak until he was 12 years old. The old beggar thought that he would have someone to rely on for the rest of his life. Unexpectedly, his grandson was hungry and went out to beg. He accidentally dirted the shoes of a Meng family soldier and was beaten to death by him. How could this be the guardian of Dongqing and the people? They were obviously a group of jackals, wolves, tigers and leopards in human skin. They were evil spirits from hell. "What are you scolding, you old bastard?" A soldier with sharp ears heard some noise and walked forward while cursing. The old beggar decided to go all out. He spat at the soldier and said, "I'm scolding you bastards." After a while there was a pool of blood on the roadside. An old beggar with several holes in his body was lying next to the body of a little beggar. The refugees at the side were already numb. Their eyes were like wooden beads. They didn't move at all, just like wooden statues. At this moment the crisp sound of horse hooves could be heard from outside the city gate. The originally arrogant guards were like mice that met a cat. They became flattering and respectful, nodding and bowing. The person on the horse ignored the chaotic people and directly galloped into the city. "I have something to report to the county chief. Pass the message quickly." Chapter 211. The man staggered off the horse. His legs were unstable and he almost tripped on the ground. He looked like a mess. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip, slightly relieving the stinging pain from his chapped lips. His bloodshot eyes were wide open as he knelt on the ground. While secretly slowing down his breathing, he secretly thought about the speech he had prepared before. After a long time, the sound of rustling footsteps could be heard from afar. That person hurriedly pinched his thigh, using the pain to dispel his drowsy consciousness. His chest was beating like thunder, and the powerful heartbeat was extremely clear in his ears. He lowered his head and saw a greenish-brown figure pass by him. The figure went straight to the seat of honor and sat down. There was a sweet smell in the air. Even though Meng County was in chaos, Meng Zhan, the leader of the Mengs and the county chief of Meng County, still lived a delicate life. After a while, the man on the seat of honor asked him, "Has Second Langjun arrived in Shangjing?" His voice was calm and steady for his age. His tone was elegant and graceful, as if he was reciting a poem. This kind of tone was popular in the past 2 years. It was a popular fashion among the aristocratic families. Many people purposely followed it and tried to be cultured. Some people learned it and sounded pretentious like a male duck with a hoarse voice. People who didn't know better would think that the person had a problem with his voice. Some people had a unique voice. Their tone seemed to be tailor-made for them. Once they opened their mouths, they sounded elegant. Meng Zhan belonged to the latter. Many aristocratic ladies in Zhangzhou secretly praised him for his elegance. He could suck people's souls away when he opened his mouth. The face of the squire on the ground darkened. He knocked his head on the ground. The sound was deep and powerful. Even the ground trembled. The squire's blood drained from his face. His face was as white as paper. He knocked his head on the ground, but his fingers were still shaking. His palms quickly secreted sweat, which soon became damp, revealing the uneasiness in his heart. I'm useless. I couldn't do what you asked of me. Second Langjun was captured by that traitor Meng Hun. Meng Zhan's eyes turned cold. He threw the teacup in his hand. It hit the squire's forehead and the hot tea splashed on his face. Second Langjun was captured by Meng Hun? He opened his peach blossom eyes slightly, and the corners of his eyes were slightly raised. He asked in a sinister tone, I sent a team of you there, but you couldn't even protect the second Langjun. What use do the Meng family have for you pieces of trash? The squire, who could be arrogant in front of ordinary people, and even the Hejian county chief didn't dare to defend himself. As Meng Zhan's squire, he knew what was right. In the face of the tide-like rewards, the system was so happy that it couldn't find the north. The more tips Jiang Pingji received, the more points of popularity it would receive. After all, the system and the streamer would split the points equally. It was a pity that Jiang Pingji did not adopt the few tricks that it had set up. If she had, the rewards would have been 10 times more than what she was getting now. While he felt that it was a pity, he was also drooling as he looked at the endless stream of rewards. Jiang Pingji said to the system in her mind, you can start the semi-interactive live stream mode now. Just hang up the topic that I've set. As soon as she finished speaking, the system diligently did as she was told. The next second, all the audience saw a subtitle in the livestream room. Bandit Suppression in the Deep Mountains 1. That was the theme of the task of the semi-interactive livestream mode. Bandit Suppression. Meng Hun did not let her down. Under his leadership, all the troops' training was on the right track. The troops, which were originally unskilled and undisciplined, were starting to take shape. After a month of hard training, everyone's physical fitness had improved to different extents. They were much weaker than the regular troops, but compared to the motley crowd of bandits, they were definitely much stronger. Langjun, how can you be so capricious? Suku had lost count of how many times he had sighed because of Jiang Pingji. Anyway, it's not the first time. You'll get used to it. I cherish my life and ordinary people can't hurt me. Jiang Pingji smiled at him and comforted him. Xiaoyi, you should have some confidence in me. If this motley crew is worthy of me cowering and seeking protection behind them, how can I achieve great things in the future? From now on, the battle will only be bigger than now. It was just a small fight, but Suku kept nagging. What would happen in the future? Even though Suku had a lot to say, he was like a deflated ball in front of Jiang Pingji. He was speechless. At that moment, the tall and sturdy Meng Hun came in and said to Jiang Pingji, Langjun, everything is ready. Oh, I see. After that, Jiang Pingji took out 2 rolls of coarse cloth from her sleeves and spread them out. Between the 2 rolls of coarse cloth, the larger one had an irregular shape. On it was a geographical map drawn by charcoal. It was the mountains and streams near Hejian County. In addition, there were many symbols with different meanings on it. It was so densely packed that it dazzled people's eyes. This place is our next target. I secretly went there to investigate and drew a rough map. After that, Jiang Pingji spread out the other roll of coarse cloth. On it was a map of the bandit village and the distribution of the people at each checkpoint. Jiang Pingji had just informed them yesterday that she would take some people to suppress the bandits. Time was very tight. It would take a lot of time just to pack things and prepare food. Meng Hun was worried that his Langjun would act recklessly and wanted to have a good talk with her in private, but he didn't expect that she had made thorough preparations. Meng Hun stared at the detailed map of the bandit village like a tiger. He was fascinated by it and simulated the action and tactics in his mind. Suku was the only one who paid attention to something else. His face darkened and he asked, Langjun, did you say that this is the map you found yourself? Meng Hun clapped his hands and said, this way of drawing is indeed very clear. If it is used as a scout, Suku interrupted him coldly, this is not the point. The point is, When did you go into the mountains alone to find out the details of the bandits' village? It was more dangerous than going out to suppress the bandits herself. Meng Han was stunned. He finally understood why Suku looked so pale. The map on the coarse cloth was drawn by Jiang Pingji herself. What did that mean? It meant that she had gone into the mountains alone to find out the strongholds of the bandits' villages one after another. Facing Meng Han and Suku's disapproving eyes, Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. She was not alone. Didn't she have 10,000 experienced viewers in the live streaming room? Moreover, she had done this kind of pioneering work countless times in the past. She didn't have to go deep into the bandits' village. She had her own ways to get information. To increase the pressure and motivation of the troops, Jiang Pingji also formulated a series of rules and regulations when she established the troops. For example, there was a monthly assessment for the selection of sergeants. Nongqin was one of them. The sergeants sat on the other sergeants and tried to keep a distance from Nongqin. Nongqin Yao Kupeng. And Nongqin. Just a few days ago, there was a reshuffle within the troop to select a new corporal. Nongqin was the only one who got the position. This time no one dared to speak ill of her behind her back, because she had passed all the trials in the drill ground in front of everyone. No one knew that the girl who usually looked quiet and unassuming could be so ruthless when she fought. In terms of strength, she wasn't as strong as these men, but her attacks were extremely cunning and fast. Many people didn't even have time to react before their hands were clamped behind their backs, unable to move and kneeling on the ground. There was also an ignorant boy who bullied Nongqin because she was a girl and tried to attack her chest. Who knew that the boy almost lost his penis? They were men. They didn't know how women felt when their breasts were grabbed, but they knew that if their family jewels were kicked, it would be so painful that they would grimace in pain and curl up on the ground, unable to straighten their backs. Fortunately, that kid was slow and didn't manage to grab it. Otherwise, they had every reason to believe that Nongqin would have crushed the boy's penis with her feet. He could not have fooled around with any girl, but he had to provoke this Rakshas's daughter. Meng Han explained the details of the deployment to everyone. Do any of you have any questions about this? Except for Nongqin, the other sergeants were all trained by him. They had a tacit understanding with each other and he trusted their abilities. They were all experienced veterans, much better than the servants Jiang Pingji bought from the broker house. It was normal for them to be sergeants. The other sergeants all shook their heads, indicating that there was no problem. Meng Han was secretly satisfied and then he turned his eyes to Nongqin, who was silent. Do you have any questions? Nongqin frowned and said, What you mean is that we should catch all the bandits alive and try not to cause too much damage? She couldn't imagine what was the use of keeping those bandits alive. That's right. Meng Han added, This is also Long Juan's idea. We are short of people now. Nongqin nodded and said, I understand. We will do as Lang Jun says. Jiang Pingji gave Nongqin a crash course. Most of the skills and methods she taught were assassination and sneak attacks, which emphasized on miraculous effects. She needed to make others acknowledge her in the shortest time possible, instead of denying her because she was a girl. Chapter 215. Astrology? What's so interesting about all the stars in the sky? So what do you see? Astrological divination and whatnot, in her opinion, were all nonsense. It was ridiculous to talk about gods and spirits with someone who had fought in the galaxy and wandered around a few planets. Suka didn't know what Jiang Pingji was thinking. He said honestly, I'm not good at astrology. I can only see that there's something strange about Ziwei Star. He wasn't like the other aristocratic families who had a lot of educational resources. He didn't even have enough books to read, let alone a famous teacher. Could be said that in the month he stayed in the Lu residence, he had read dozens or even hundreds of times more books than before. How could a commoner compare to the accumulation of knowledge of an aristocratic family? Suka couldn't even be considered a commoner now. At most he was a lowly commoner who carried a crime on his back. There's something strange about Ziwei Star? What do you mean? Jiang Pingji looked up at the stars in the sky. She couldn't figure out anything. Suku hugged his knees and pointed at the bright star in the sky. He said, Langjun, look. That's Ziwei Star. It's bright and dark and there's a heart flickering around it. It's a jinx. It means that there's a hidden danger around Ziwei Star. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, It's just a few stars. What do you mean by corresponding lifespan? It's nonsense. Suku was stunned. Why didn't she follow the script? He tilted his head and saw his Langjun hugging her knees beside him. Her side profile was a little blurred by the night, but the light in her eyes was especially bright in the dark. Jiang Pingji said in a gentle voice, I don't think there's any basis for astrology. Those shining stars are celestial bodies or suns that are very far away from us. They seem unreachable, but the future is hard to predict. You said that Ziwei star represents an emperor, but the world is divided into 5 countries. There are 5 emperors. Xiaoyu, which one do you think Ziwei star represents? Suku was stumped by her question. He thought for a while and said, I don't know why you think so, but astrology may not be nonsense. The layman watches the show while the expert sees the artistry. As for Ziwei star, in my opinion there's only one emperor. The rest are all fake emperors. Jiang Pingji listened attentively, to the point that Suku thought he had convinced her. Unexpectedly she suddenly burst into laughter. Her expression was a little painful as she tried to hold back her laughter. Xiaoyu, this is the first time I've realized that you're kind of cute. Jiang Pingji laughed for a long time, which made Suku feel embarrassed. He secretly gritted his teeth and suppressed his temper. He asked, Langjun, are you playing tricks on me again? I never meant that. Jiang Pingji said this, but she still had a smile on her face. It was not convincing. When she was done laughing, she continued, an emperor is never determined by a single star. The same goes for fate. She believed that old monk Chen could see the emperor's purple aura, but she didn't believe that the purple aura could prove anything. Even monk Liaochen himself said that the purple qi could not guarantee that she would ascend to the 9-5 realms in the future. In the end, these things were all illusory. After a while, Jiang Pingji asked, Xiaoyu, is it difficult for poor people to study? Suka didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Langjun, aren't you asking the obvious? Jiang Pingji said, maybe in another 10 or even 20 or 30 years, everyone will be able to afford it. It's not a privilege for a small group of people. He didn't expect that to be what she was going to say. He almost couldn't react for a moment. He said with some yearning, if that's the case, it will definitely be a peaceful and prosperous era that everyone yearns for. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, I had a feeling that the streaming room will be broadcast for a long time, maybe a lifetime. I'm a person without perseverance. Maybe I'll give up after a month or 2, but now I feel that I'll keep going, maybe for a lifetime. Not for anything else, but for the streamer's words just now. I also want to see such a peaceful and prosperous era. Paydaxing, this once again proves that this streaming room is very positive, even if the streamer has no morals. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, Lao Ciji Lianmeng, unruly people, this is my confession to the streamer. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, hey, Yao Yao Ling. There's a group of unruly people who want to compete with me for my favor. I'll reward them with 10 feet of red. There will be. Everything will be there. Jiang Pingji looked at the sky and calculated the time. But we have to take it one step at a time. If we go too far, we'll easily pull our balls. We can't be fat even if we eat a mouthful of rice. Before we realize this lofty and ambitious dream, we have to get rid of the bandits first. Suku was dumbfounded. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, I feel sorry for Suku every day. Yaoling Shu Shu, sorry +1. I always feel that the streamer likes to make Suka's blood boil. Or when he's about to burst into tears, she suddenly says something that kills the mood and destroys the atmosphere. It's so embarrassing. Even a normal person will get cancer of embarrassment. Tao Danio, I believe that this is the streamer's bad taste for Suka's teenage love. I don't know if it's love, but it's definitely a bad taste. Here, put it on. Don't catch a cold. Jiang Pingji threw the cloak that her maid had prepared for her to Suku and let him put it on. The weather had warmed up a lot. Many people had put on their spring clothes, which were made of thin material. Suku was no exception. But he had underestimated the temperature in the deep mountains. The air was still damp and it was cold to the bone. Holding the cloak, Suku hesitated for a long time before he put it on. The lining of the cloak was made of rabbit fur. It was not thick, but it was very warm. It immediately separated him from the cold outside, and his thighs and arms did not have to shiver in the cold. Langjun, aren't you afraid of the cold? Suku asked. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, it's so cold. How can it be cold? I'm not a delicate little boy who's afraid of the cold. Suke looked down at himself, who was tightly wrapped, and then at his Langjun, who was dressed in neat clothes. He was suspicious and kept silent. Let's stop talking. Time's up. As soon as she finished speaking, Meng Hun had secretly commanded a troop to hide in the shadows and approach the entrance of the stockade village. The sergeant of the troop was Nong Qin. Jiang Pingji held a crossbow in one hand and pulled the string with the other. Her snow-white wrist was exposed, which looked particularly delicate in the cold moonlight. She easily put an arrow on the bow and aimed at the watchtower nearly 300 meters away. Whoosh, the arrow shot out and there was a slight sound of breaking air. She calmly put the second arrow on the bow and it was also neat. The time difference was less than 1 second. 2 small minions of the watchtower were killed by an arrow through the heart. Half of their bodies were on the crossbar and blood was gurgling. At the same time, the troop led by Nongqin also took action. 2 breaths later, there were 3 bodies lying at Nongqin's feet. She smiled shyly at the sergeant. She didn't want to kill anyone, but she practiced the art of assassination, so she casually broke the man's neck. His stomach, which had been suffocating for a long time, finally felt a little better. He hurriedly shook his body, intending to fasten his belt. This is such a desolate place and there's no woman to relieve my boredom. Isn't it too suffocating? Boss and the others are having fun every time. That sound can be heard from the entrance of the village. I'm not allowed to complain anymore. His partner laughed at him. Hey, you can just say that you miss girls. That bandit spat out a mouthful of saliva. Bah, I want to, but you dare to say you don't want to? The 2 of them had a night patrol mission, so they did not dare to sneak out for too long. They fastened their belts and prepared to rush back. Wait. Just as they were about to leave, the bandit was stopped by his partner. He said angrily, if you want girls, go find them. Don't hold my hand. Get lost. Seriously, look over there. Isn't there something there? Hearing this, the 2 of them looked at each other and felt a little uneasy. They were afraid that there were poisonous snakes or monsters hiding in the grass. When they thought of what they had just done, their hearts beat faster and faster, and their hands and feet began to become cold. Seems to be a person. Go and see. It's a person? Before the bandit could react, his partner pushed him from behind. He lost his balance and fell into the grass. His face was stained with turbid liquid, which was suffocating. At the same time, his hands touched a strange cold soft object. Ghost. The bandit was so scared that he forgot where he was. He suddenly jumped up from the ground and crawled in the opposite direction. The other partner was also shocked. His hand trembled and he directly threw away the flint in his hand. What are you shouting for? Just as the 2 of them were scared out of their wits and were about to run away together, their leader came looking for them. There's a ghost, boss. There. It's a cold ghost. The bandit in front was scared out of his wits. His liquid-stained face was full of horror, and he pointed at the grass with trembling hands. What the hell? After the leader heard this, he was anxious, but he didn't want to lose face as a bandit leader. He calmed himself down and said stubbornly, I'd like to see what kind of thing is playing tricks on me. 2 good-for-nothings. How could they be so scared? He took a step forward and kicked the grass. Sure enough, he kicked a heavy object which scared the boss immediately. However, it was also because of this that the heavy object flipped over, revealing a face that was dripping with blood and had its eyes wide open. Under the bleak moonlight, it seemed especially terrifying. This man died with a grievance and his neck was twisted in a weird way. They were shocked at first, but then they quickly realized that this man, wasn't he the gatekeeper but face? Nonsense. What the hell? Someone is attacking the stronghold. The boss reacted quickly. He was so angry that his veins were popping and his eyes were like bells. Attacking the stronghold? At this time, the other 2 bandits also came to their senses, but they were so scared that their limbs went limp. For a moment they couldn't even stand up. Good-for-nothings. The boss cursed, turned around and ran while shouting, Wake up, there is an attack. Whoosh, there was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. An arrow streaked across the night sky like a streak of silver light, piercing through the man's neck from one side and exiting from the other. Oh, a fish that escaped the net. A voice as cold as water came from above. Jiang Pingji was standing on a nearby roof, and the crossbow in her hand had just fallen. The two bandits were scared out of their wits. They watched as the bandit leader's neck burst into a beautiful flower of blood, and the thick smell of blood spread. Then with a bang they fell to the ground. It was too fast for them to react. Hearing the voice, the two of them turned their necks stiffly. The person was reflected in the moonlight, holding a strange crossbow in his hand. The person's eyes seemed to be stained with frost and it was frighteningly cold. Capture these two as well. Jiang Pingji glanced at the two frightened bandits and said to the troops who rushed over, search this stronghold again to see if there are any fish that escaped the net. If they are obedient, keep them alive. If they resist, kill them directly. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.